Jebel Irhoud, the oldest Homo sapiens bones ever found, shook the foundations of human history. But are they actually early Homo sapiens? The idea that modern humans evolved in East Africa 200,000 years ago was challenged by the extraordinary discovery of the 300,000-year-old remains in a Moroccan mine. Indeed, the fossils recovered from the old mine on a desolate mountain in Morocco have rocked one of the most enduring foundations of the human story, that Homo sapiens arose in a cradle of humankind in East Africa 200,000 years ago. These early humans have a modern-looking face that falls within the variation of humans living today. But the archaic-looking brain case, which looks closest to a Neanderthal, indicates that brain shape and possibly brain function evolved early within the human lineage. However, according to a more recent study that looked at the morphology of early Homo sapiens skulls, the Jebel Irhoud skull fell the furthest from the others, and was closest to Neanderthals. This raises the question if these individuals were descended from southern European Neanderthals or that they were hybrids. Researchers believe the extreme age of the bones makes them the oldest known specimens of modern humans, and poses a major challenge to the idea that the earliest members of our species evolved in a Garden of Eden in East Africa 100,000 years later. If this discovery is indeed an early Homo sapiens, this gives us a completely different picture of the evolution of Homo sapiens. It means our species goes much further back in time, but also the very process of evolution is different to what we thought. It looks like our species was already present probably all over Africa by 300,000 years ago, and if there was a Garden of Eden, it might have been the size of the African continent. Scientists have long looked to East Africa as the birthplace of modern humans. Until the latest findings from Jebel Irhoud, the oldest known remnants of our species were found at Omo Kaibish in Ethiopia and dated to 195,000 years old. Other fossils and genetic evidence all point to an African origin for modern humans. What's more, Jebel Irhoud has thrown up puzzles for scientists since fossilized bones were first found at the site in the 1960s. Remains found in 1961 and 1962, and stone tools recovered with them, were attributed to Neanderthals and at first considered to be only 40,000 years old. At the time, the popular view held that modern humans evolved from Neanderthals. Today, the Neanderthals are considered a sister group that lived alongside, and even interbred with our modern human ancestors. Archaeologists unearthed the bones of at least 5 people at Jebel Irhoud in excavations that lasted years. They knew the remains were old, but were stunned when dating tests revealed that a tooth and stone tools found with the bones were about 300,000 years old. In new excavations at the Jebel Irhoud site, archaeologists found more remains, including a partial skull, a jawbone, teeth and limb bones belonging to 3 adults, a juvenile, and a child aged about 8 years old. The remains, which resemble modern humans more than any other species, were recovered from the base of an old limestone cave. Alongside the bones, researchers found sharpened flint tools, a number of gazelle bones, and lumps of charcoal, perhaps left over from fires that warmed those who once lived there. It's a desolate landscape, but on the horizon you have the Atlas Mountains with snow on top, and it's very beautiful. They are only fossils, but they had been real human beings, and very quickly you make a connection with these people who lived and died here 300,000 years ago. The researchers described how they compared the freshly excavated fossils with those of modern humans, Neanderthals and ancient human relatives that lived up to 1.8 million years ago. Regarding the face, the closest match was with modern humans. The lower jaw was similar to modern Homo sapiens too, but much larger. The most striking difference was the shape of the brain case, which was more elongated than that of modern humans. This suggests that the modern brain shape evolved in the last common ancestor, and was not inherited from the predecessor of that ancestor, which was probably an offshoot of Homo erectus. The sponsor of this video is Mel Science, a subscription service that offers monthly science boxes, which combines hands-on experiments with virtual reality and augmented reality technologies to engage kids in studying science. They are breaking the stereotype that science is boring, difficult, and only for certain types of people. They strive to make serious science accessible, interesting, and fun. Science is about exploration, experiments, discovery, and asking questions, all of which comes naturally to all children. Their products are a great fit for aspiring scientists ages 5 to 14, science teachers, schools and homeschooling parents. Mel Science believes that every child is a scientist. They help nurture children's natural interest in science by giving them fun hands-on experiments to engage, serious, detailed explanations to learn, and VR and AR technologies to dive deeper. They have 3 unique learning kits, including chemistry, physics and Mel Kids for younger children. These include free lessons in the VR app, which takes learning to a new level of understanding, and revolutionary AR science lessons free in the Kids app. Use the promo code on screen to get 50% off your first month. Sign up by September 30th using the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen and get started today. Apart from being more stout and muscular, the adults at Jebel Irhoud looked very similar to people today. The face of the specimen is the face of a modern person, but this can also be said of the 850,000-year-old Homo antecessor that lived in Spain, just across the Strait of Gibraltar. This indicates that the so-called modern face is actually quite ancient, and may have been present in the last common ancestor of Homo Sapiens and Neanderthals. In other words, the modern-looking face of Homo antecessor is actually very ancient, and our species has retained it. Whereas Neanderthals are the ones whose faces changed more during their evolution. Either way, Homo antecessor is probably a better guide to what our common ancestor looked like, compared to Homo heidelbergensis or Homo ergaster. This has important implications in human evolution, as we shall see. The scientists laid out how they dated the stone tools to between 280,000 and 350,000 years, and a lone tooth to 290,000 years. The remains of more individuals may yet be found at the site, but precisely what they were doing there is unclear. Analysis of the flint tools shows that the stones came not from the local area, but from a region 30 miles south of Jebel Irhoud. So, why did they come here? They brought their toolkit with them and they exhausted it. The tools they brought with them have been resharpened, and resharpened again. They did not produce new tools on the spot. It might be that they did not stay that long, or maybe it was an area they would come to do something specific. Anthropologists think they were hunting gazelles, because there are a lot of gazelle bones, and they were making a lot of fires. Scientists have too few fossils to know whether modern humans had spread to the 4 corners of Africa by 300,000 years ago. This speculation is based on what the scientists see as similar features in a 260,000-year-old skull found in Florisbad in South Africa. But the dating of this skull is also disputed, with some scientists believing it is actually much younger. Nevertheless, the idea is that early Homo sapiens dispersed around the continent and elements of human modernity appeared in different places. And so different parts of Africa contributed to the emergence of what we call modern humans today. The theory is very compelling, but there are problems. One of the big questions about the emergence of anatomically modern humans has been whether our body plan evolved quickly or slowly. The Jebel Irhoud find seems to suggest the latter. It seems our faces became modern long before our skulls took on the shape they have today. There are some intriguing possibilities too. The tools the people at Jebel Irhoud were making were based on a knapping technique, called levallois, a sophisticated way of shaping stone tools. The date of 300,000 years ago adds to a growing realization that levallois originates a lot earlier than we thought. Is Jebel Irhoud telling us that this new technology is linked to the emergence of the hominin line that will lead to modern humans? Does the new find imply there was more than one hominin lineage in Africa at this time? Some scientists are also uneasy with the fact that the Jebel Irhoud scientists are combining fossils from different individuals, and comparing reconstructions of complete skulls from fragmentary remains. And such recreations can look very different from the individuals on which they are based. To some scientists, claiming these remains are Homo sapiens stretches the meaning of that term a bit. These humans who lived between 50,000 to 300,000 years ago are a morphologically diverse group. Whenever we find more than a couple of them from the same deposits, such as at Omo Kaibish and Herto in Ethiopia or Skul and Kafsa in Israel, their morphology is all over the place. The Omo 1 and Herto specimens have a modern-like anatomy that includes the presence of the two craniomandibular morphology of the species, cranial proportions that result in a tall vault and a chin, and are generally considered the earliest undisputed remains of Homo sapiens. But all other African fossils of this time show a mosaic of derived and archaic characteristics. Nevertheless, many unanswered questions remain, partly because of the scarcity of late Middle Pleistocene fossils, from 350 to 130,000 years ago. The lack of African fossils is a major constraint to any study of the African fossil record. These questions are addressed in a paper titled, Deciphering African Late Middle Pleistocene Hominin Diversity and the Origin of Our Species. These details are very scientifically worded, so be sure to ask questions in the comments if it is not clear. The paper states that while the Jebel Irhoud remains were originally described as showing strong similarities with Neanderthals, the new study of the Jebel Irhoud remains emphasizes their affinities with Homo sapiens, despite the absence of key modern humans' morphology, for example, a tall and globular vault and inverted chin. Both the southern African Florisbad fossil and the eastern African specimens and Omo 2 show similarities with the last common ancestors and early Homo sapiens. A northern African origin is less likely, because Irhoud 1 displays a different affinity pattern, making it morphologically closer to the Neanderthals. The specimens from Jebel Irhoud brought new information regarding the morphology of North African hominins. The Irhoud 11 mandible shows some derived features, for example, forward an increase in mandibular body height and narrow section, but lacks a full modern human inverted chin, as was noted in the juvenile Irhoud 3 specimen. The fragmentary upper face of Irhoud 10 is morphologically similar to the upper face of Irhoud 118, which falls within, but at the edge of the distribution of modern human facial morphologies. But, when analyzed as an integrated part of the cranium, shares more similarities with a possible modern human and Neanderthal last common ancestor than with Homo sapiens. An alternative hypothesis regarding the North African population, represented by the Jebel Irhoud fossils, could build upon recent genomic results. These results suggest that the ancestral Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA, shared with the Denisova and Proto-Neanderthal fossils, was replaced by an African mitochondrial DNA between 460 and 219,000 years ago. Considering the phenotypic affinities of Irhoud 1 with both Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, it is possible that the Irhoud fossils represent local descendants of an African population that dispersed out of Africa during a Green Sahara event. Thus, they related to the African populations which introgressed into the European lineage at this time, and contributing to the evolution of the classic Neanderthals. Following these results, it is possible to tentatively draw a framework for the origin of Homo sapiens. The speciation process appears to have been complex, going through different phases that may not have contributed to the genetic and phenotypic structure of current modern human populations. A first stage of phenotypic diversification, from 350 to 200,000 years ago, may have happened locally, with different contemporary populations forming local pre-Homo sapiens groups, as they are represented in the fossil record. This phase may have been followed by a period of fragmentation and differential expansion of populations, leading to hybridization and coalescence of groups. This could have resulted in the emergence of morphologically derived populations of anatomically modern humans, between 200 to 100,000 years ago, as exemplified by the fossils from Herto, Skul and Kafsa. But the evidence shows just how incredible the Jebel Irhoud site is, whether they are Homo sapiens or some other group. These fossils are the rarest of the rare, because the human fossil record from this time period in Africa is so poorly represented. They give us a direct look at what early members of our species looked like, as well as their behavior. You might look twice at the brow ridges of Jebel Irhoud human if you saw them on a living person. It might not be a face you'd see every day, but you would definitely recognize them as human. It really does look like in Africa especially, but also globally, our evolution was characterized by numerous different species all living at the same time, and possibly even in the same places.